Welcome to Orbit Deniers. We are dedicated to educating the people of Earth about Earth's climate history, therefore Earth's climate future. The Earth is on a 100,000 year elliptical orbit. At the coldest part of that orbit, we are 94.5 million miles from the Earth. That's when we have glacier maximums, also known as ice ages. During the warmest part of that orbit, we are 91.4 million miles from the sun. That is when the glaciers melt. That's when the Earth is warm. Scientists call this glacier minimums. That's because all the glaciers in the northern hemisphere melt. The oceans rise. It has nothing to do with man-made global warming. It has everything to do with the Earth's elliptical orbit around the sun. Now, you've heard of the Green New Deal, which is an attempt by environmentalists and Democrats to eliminate all man-made CO2 in 10 years, or by 2030. Man-made CO2 is actually a good thing. It's a blessing. Plants breathe CO2. The more CO2 there is, the better plants grow. If you go into a greenhouse, they normally up the CO2 level to 12 times what it is in the normal air. That's why greenhouses have such lush plants. Tomatoes, corn, you name it, grows much better in a greenhouse with high CO2. If you were to eliminate man-made CO2, corn, tomatoes, every crop farmers grow would grow slower and smaller. Trees would die. The idea that we need to eliminate CO2 is a path to death to the human race. If you want to get human beings to go extinct, if you enjoy starvation and famine, eliminate man-made CO2 and you will see the price of food go up and starvation spread throughout the planet. If you really want to see all humans die, eliminate all CO2 on Earth, the plants will die, there'll be no more oxygen, and there'll be no more food. That is the path of the Green New Deal, which is the elimination of CO2. You eliminate CO2, all the plants die, all the oxygen and all the food for humans, for dogs, for all species die. You want mass extinction on planet Earth, eliminate CO2. CO2 is one of the two most important gases in the atmosphere, oxygen and CO2. One feeds the other. You eliminate CO2, you kill the plants. You eliminate oxygen, you kill all the animals. I like animals. I like humans. I like dogs. I like kittens. And I like CO2. But let's get back to the Earth's orbit and why you've never heard this before. The purpose of the environmentalists are to guilt trip people into giving them money and power. The Earth's orbit has no money and no power to give, therefore there's no guilt trip that comes along with it. If you want people to know the truth about Earth's climate history, therefore Earth's climate future, please donate to orbitdeniers.com. That's me, Tim Anderson. That money, whether you buy advertisement or you just donate cash, will go towards educating people about the Earth's climate history. It's called the Milankovitch cycle. Please look up the Milankovitch cycle. He is a mathematician that did the Earth's orbit math. Once again, we are on a 100,000 year elliptical orbit. During ice ages, we are 94.5 million miles from the sun. The northern hemisphere freezes solid during that part of the Earth's orbit. During the warmest part of the Earth's orbit, we are 91.4 million miles from the sun. That's when the glaciers melt and the oceans rise. This has happened 20 consecutive times. The oceans are going to rise because the glaciers are melting. They started melting 17,000 years ago, 17,000 years before man-made CO2. And they're going to continue to melt until the glaciers are all gone. and then the Earth will begin to drift farther from the sun, and the glaciers will come back. You and I have nothing to do with it. Whether you drive an F-150 or a Tesla, the Earth orbit is going to change due to the elliptical nature of the orbit. So as we get closer, we get warmer. As we get farther from the sun, we get colder. It has nothing to do with whether you drive an F-150 or a Tesla. The Earth has done this repeatedly. There's going to be another ice age, no matter what we do. And before that, the glaciers are going to melt away completely. Scientists call this glacier maximums and glacier minimums. We are in a glacier minimum. That means during the minimum, 20 consecutive times during glacier minimums, the glaciers in the northern hemisphere melted completely away, and the oceans rose so much that Florida, New York, New Orleans, London were all underwater. It's happened 20 consecutive times. It's going to happen a 21st consecutive time, no matter what you or I do. Then we're going to experience, the Earth is going to experience, not us, another glacier maximum. That means the snow is not going to melt for thousands of years, taking water out of the oceans. New York will not only become dry, you'll be able to walk to Manhattan because the East River won't exist. You'll be able to walk over ice to Manhattan. New Orleans will become dry. The oceans will go out more than 12 miles from today's coast. It's okay. It'll be the 21st consecutive time it'll happen. But you don't need to worry about it because we will all be dead. Thousands of years from now, the Earth will freeze again. In another 100,000 years, the glaciers will melt and the oceans will rise, and then the glaciers will come back and the oceans will sink. But don't worry, you're never going to live to see it. Neither will I. This is a 100,000-year elliptical orbit that the Earth goes through. It has nothing at all to do with man-made global warming and whether you burn CO2. By the way, every time you've exhaled in your life, you've made man-made CO2. Your parents made man-made CO2. You make man-made CO2. I make man-made CO2 every time I exhale. I made a lot of CO2 during this video. Your kids will make man-made CO2. The only way to eliminate man-made CO2 is to kill all the humans. I do not support that, so I do not support the elimination of man-made CO2 or AOC for that matter. Remember, the Green New Deal has to kill all humans to work. Or you could just accept the fact that the Earth is on an elliptical orbit that causes glaciers and glacier maximums and glacier minimums, ice ages and warm ages, and you and I have nothing to do with it. You are watching OrbitDeniers.com. Please donate. Advertise with us. We have advertising opportunities. Hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the bell. I'm Tim. This has been OrbitDeniers.com. Thank you.